If you're watching this right now, this video found you for a reason. You were meant to see this today because what I'm about to share is going to validate something you felt your entire life but could never quite explain. You've always known something was different about you, haven't you? The truth is, God doesn't randomly place people on your timeline. Every video you watch, every person you meet, every moment of synchronicity in your life is part of a divine blueprint that was written before your first breath. And right now, at this exact moment, you're receiving confirmation of something your soul has always carried in the deepest places of your being. You are being called to recognize the signs that prove God was preparing you to be chosen even before you entered this world. Think about your childhood for a moment. Really go back there. Not the easy parts, not the happy birthday party memories, but the deeper moments that shaped who you are. If you've ever felt like you didn't belong, like there was something old and knowing behind your young eyes, like you carried heaviness that other kids around you couldn't understand, you're not broken. You were being prepared. Every unusual moment in your childhood was a sacred signature, a divine fingerprint marking you as one of the chosen. This is not metaphor or wishful thinking. This is spiritual archaeology, uncovering proof that your entire journey has been orchestrated by forces far greater than the world around you. I'm going to walk you through 9 specific signs from your childhood that reveal God was preparing you to be a chosen one. And I want you to really feel into these, because somewhere deep inside, you already know these signs. You've seen them. You've lived them. This video is simply giving language to what your spirit has always understood. The psalmist wrote, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. Before you were born, before your parents even held you, God knew exactly who you would become. Your childhood was the preparation ground for your divine assignment." The first sign is early spiritual sensitivity. A chosen one child doesn't just live in the world like other children. You were aware of invisible realities that made adults uncomfortable to discuss. You felt presences in rooms. You knew things before they happened. You sensed when people were lying, even if they were smiling. You may have seen shadows move when nothing was there, or felt certain places as dangerous when everyone else felt safe. Your parents might have called you imaginative, overly sensitive, even anxious, but what they were witnessing was raw spiritual perception. You were seeing through the veil at an age when most children were still learning to navigate the material world. The prophet Jeremiah received his commission from the womb, and God said, "I knew you before I formed you in the womb." This early sensitivity wasn't a flaw or a sign of mental illness. It was your calling card, your antenna tuned to frequencies others couldn't hear. You were being trained in the language of the spiritual realm before your rational mind could argue with what you were experiencing. Even now, you feel things others don't. You walk into a room and know the emotional temperature before anyone speaks. This is not coincidence. This is the activation of your spiritual gifts beginning in childhood. The second sign is that you felt fundamentally different from your siblings, even if they were born to the same parents. You looked at your brother or sister and couldn't understand how you came from the same source. They were interested in typical childhood things, while you were drawn to the mysteries, the questions about death and meaning and God. They seemed unburdened by the weight of existence, while you felt it crushing down on you even as a small child. This wasn't rejection of your family. This was recognition of your difference. Chosen ones are often placed in families not as a place of belonging, but as a station of service. Your family was your training ground, not your tribe. You were the healer, the sensitive one, the old soul, while they were just young, just ordinary. And that aloneness you felt wasn't punishment. It was preparation. It was God saying, I'm setting you apart. Your assignment requires a different internal wiring than theirs. The third sign is vivid, prophetic childhood dreams. While other children forgot their dreams by breakfast, yours stayed with you. They were visceral, detailed, sometimes terrifying. You dreamed of disasters before they happened. You dreamed of people you'd never met who later appeared in your life. You had dreams with archetypal symbolism, temples, angels, serpents, floods, ceremonies of initiations. These weren't random neural firings. These were cosmic downloads. Your subconscious mind was more open to the spirit realm than your waking mind, so that's where the messages came through. Biblical figures received their most crucial guidance in dreams. Jacob's ladder came in a dream. Joseph received divine warnings in dreams that saved his entire family. Your childhood dreams were God's way of communicating with you before the world taught you to dismiss the invisible as unreal. Even now, your dreams carry messages. Pay attention to them. They are not your subconscious processing anxiety. They are divine intelligence communicating in the symbolic language that bypasses your rational defenses. The fourth sign is an inexplicable attraction to nature and animals. Chosen ones feel at home in the natural world in a way that transcends normal childhood love of animals. You didn't just like animals. You felt a kinship with them. They seemed to trust you in ways they didn't trust others. Birds would land near you. Cats would seek you out. Dogs would calm in your presence. You understood creatures in a primal way, and nature itself called to you. You could spend hours alone in forests or by water and feel more peaceful than anywhere else. This wasn't just preference. This was attunement. Animals sense what humans cannot. Spiritual authority, purity, frequency. A chosen one radiates something that creatures recognize as safe, as aligned with creation itself. Your grandmother Earth remembered you as one of her own. This connection to nature is a sign that your consciousness extends beyond the human realm, that you were created to be a bridge between worlds. The fifth sign is unexplainable childhood fears and phobias that seem to have no source. You might have been terrified of certain locations without ever having had a traumatic experience there. You feared specific types of situations that made no logical sense. You had nightmares about places you'd never been. You experienced panic or dread around particular people, even as a child, before you understood why. These weren't irrational anxieties. They were past life echoes. They were your soul remembering trauma or danger from previous incarnations. A chosen one carries cellular memory across lifetimes. You weren't afraid of that house because something bad happened to you there in this life. You were afraid because something terrible happened to you there in another life. and your soul still remembered the frequency of danger. These fears are your spiritual radar, your ancient knowing, your protection mechanism activated early. The sixth sign is premature empathy for suffering. While other children your age were playing carefree games, you were overwhelmed by others' pain. You saw someone hurt and felt it in your body. You heard about suffering in the world and couldn't unsee it. You were moved to tears by stories that barely registered with your peers. You carried the weight of others' emotions, even though you were just a child. This hypersensitivity wasn't weakness. This was your calling. You were being activated as a healer, a mirror, someone whose very presence could facilitate transformation. You felt other people's pain so intensely because your consciousness was not fully sealed into the illusion of separation. You could perceive the universal consciousness flowing through everyone. This is the mark of a chosen one, someone who cannot bear to see others suffer, because on some level you know that their suffering is your suffering. You are all connected. The seventh sign is rejection by your peers, a sense of never quite fitting in despite surface attempts to conform. You might have had friends, but you didn't feel truly seen. You were the one who seemed older than your age, the one other kids called weird or too intense. The cool kids sensed you were different and excluded you, not out of cruelty, but out of instinct. And here's the truth: they were right to exclude you. You couldn't be fully part of their tribe because you weren't meant to be. You were a lone wolf cub in a pack of domesticated dogs. Your consciousness was already attuned to higher frequencies. You couldn't fully pretend to be small to fit in because something in you refused the compression. This rejection was a blessing, though it felt like a curse at the time. It kept you from the fully assimilated experience that would have deadened your gifts. The eighth sign is fascination with God and spirituality that transcended your family's actual beliefs or practices. Perhaps your family was religious, but your interest went deeper than their orthodoxy. Or perhaps your family had no faith at all. Yet you were inexplicably drawn to spiritual questions, to sacred spaces, to religious figures and texts. You asked questions about God that made adults uncomfortable. You were convinced of invisible realities, while the material world around you scoffed. You felt a calling toward the divine that no one in your family shared or understood. This wasn't learned behavior. This was your soul's remembrance of its origin. You were a mystic in a family of mechanics, a healer in a family of accountants, a visionary in a family of realists. Your difference wasn't defect, it was destiny. The ninth and final sign is surviving a childhood danger or illness that felt cosmically significant. Maybe you nearly drowned. Maybe you had a serious accident that should have been fatal but wasn't. Maybe you survived a severe illness that doctors said you shouldn't have survived. Maybe you were in the wrong place at the right time to avoid a tragedy. These weren't luck. These weren't coincidence. These were divine protection. Your life was preserved because your mission required your presence on this earth. An invisible hand protected you. An angelic force intervened. The universe itself conspired to keep you alive because you had work to do. You were never supposed to be taken. Your death was not written in the stars. You were protected from the moment of your conception because God had plans for you that extended beyond any single lifetime. Look at these 9 signs. Count how many apply to you. If even 3 or 4 resonate deeply, you already know the truth. Your childhood wasn't random suffering followed by an ordinary life. It was sacred preparation. Every weird moment was a calling. Every moment you felt alone was actually a moment of communion with higher consciousness. Every way you didn't fit in was a sign you were being preserved for something greater. You are chosen, not because you're perfect, not because you earned it, but because before the foundation of the world, God's eye was on you. You were marked. You were set apart. You were prepared in the secret places of your becoming. The prophet Isaiah wrote, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." This is not someone else's promise. This is your inheritance. Your childhood signs were not mistakes or random neurology. They were God writing your name across your own consciousness, calling you to remember who you are before you were born. You came here with a mission. Everything you experienced was preparation for this time, this moment, this awakening. You are chosen. You are called. You are favored by forces that operate beyond the veil. The question now is not whether these signs apply to you. The question is, now that you see them clearly, what will you do with the truth that you've always been divine? What will you do now that you understand you were never meant to be ordinary? Your childhood prepared you for this awakening. Now, the real work begins. Comment the number of childhood signs that you recognized in yourself. Like this video to amplify your awakening across the algorithm. The universe needs your light to reach those who are still sleeping. Subscribe so you never miss these divine messages that are meant specifically for you. And remember, you were never an accident. You were never a mistake. You were always chosen, always favored, always protected. Go step into your assignment.